Une nouvelle fois d'accueillir à Paris le président Volodymyr
to once again
Zelensky
have
pour
President Zelensky here in
qui a
Paris.
débuté hier soir avec un entretien
We first met
bilatéral
bilaterally
approfondi.
last evening for extensive discussions. We continued them this morning, again with members of the coalition of the willing,
Le Premier ministre
presided over by Keir Starmer. Following those meetings, we then once again spoke with President Donald Trump. The objective is quite clear. As said on the 8th of August at the White House, the side of peace is in Washington, Kiev, and all European capitals, and all allies, all 35 allies as part of the coalition of the willing. Those countries who have taken action against Russia's attack and are striving for peace, long-term peace. In 2022, Russia was the only instigator of the war, as it had done back in 2014 in Crimea and Donbass. Russia is the only one continuing to choose to ramp up and continue fighting. Ukraine did not choose war, and it accepted President Trump's proposal for a ceasefire back in Riyadh in March. Since then, Russia has continued to give false promises and make public statements which go against everything that we've been fighting for. They try and have a new take on history. They seem to want to continue to strive for permanent war, as we've seen over the past few days and weeks quite clearly, with many lives being lost, continuing to send soldiers to the front to try and win over a few more kilometers of land at great loss on both sides. Russia has lost some 1 million soldiers, either dead or wounded, and has taken over a considerable portion of Ukrainian territory. And Russia does not have the right. The objective of this summit and our meeting yesterday was to try and make sure that we have all the right conditions for negotiation. The problem, as I have just said, is that Russia is waging a war of aggression. And they would have to withdraw their troops from Ukrainian soil. And they are fighting an immoral war. So discussions are only possible if we can have very strong peace guarantees for Ukrainian people. And if those conditions are absolutely essential for a ceasefire or a peace agreement or an armistice. Let me say it here today, after a number of commitments that were made in Washington back in mid-August by the European nations' president that were present. The head of the armed forces and ministers of defense have been working tirelessly since then in close coordination with America and NATO members, and I can say here today that we are ready. The coalition of the willing, created on the 17th of February 2025 here in Paris, and following on from the work on the 24th of February, is a coalition for peace. And today the coalition of the willing met to ensure political and military commitments and pledges. All 35 members agreed to ensure peace and security stability for Ukraine. We need to ensure that in the negotiations that there are no conditions put on the type of armed forces that Ukraine will have. So therefore, we are going to provide means to refurbish and to resupply the Ukrainian armed forces to dissuade any further Russian attacks. This is the first and essential step that we have made, and we have pulled together all contributions from all countries. The second part of the peace and security guarantees is to ensure reassurance forces. There are 26 countries who have formally made pledges. who have committed to provide additional forces in Ukraine where needed, be it on the land, in the air, or by sea, to provide, again, further support to Ukraine and to Ukrainians until a ceasefire or peace can be found. Now, these military forces are not there to wage war against Russia. They are forces just there to ensure peace and to send a clear strategic message. One for a ceasefire, not on the front lines, which are still being determined, but they are a major way of all 26 members to provide support to Ukraine. An outcome of this summit is us going to be continuing political avenues. All countries within the coalition of the willing, along with Ukraine, have spoken about this. And we also spoke with President Trump, during which we were able to outline a number of conclusions, which are quite simple. In the coming days, we are going to finalize the American support for these guarantees. And again, they're going to be fully involved in all steps of the process. And I would like to thank representatives of the armed forces or political forces for all of their work. So in the coming days, we will shore up American support, but it was said very clearly that all members of the coalition of the willing, be they European or from Asia, the Pacific region, Canada, all took on responsibility. We also decided to coordinate our sanction measures, both primary and secondary sanctions, to be more effective and to curtail Russian efficacy. This is what we're also able to speak about with President Trump just a few moments ago. Russian counterparts and American counterparts will speak once again, and a number of key dates were put in place, and we'll make sure that those dates will be upheld. There is going to be a meeting between presidents and a trilateral and quadrilateral meeting as well. If Russia continues to refuse concrete peace discussions, which is the second possible outcome, given the way they have been behaving over the past few months since March, we will take additional sanctions along with the United States to provide a clear response to their refusal to make headway. This is also what President Trump said quite clearly during our phone call. Because we have always been on the side of the rule of law and peace, we want fair, long-term peace. We want Ukraine to be able to enjoy all of its rights, for international law to not be broken. It is because we abide by international law. It is for Ukraine, but it is also for our own security. And this is what I wanted to say quite clearly. I would like to thank all members of heads of state and government for attending and for all of their tireless work. I would like to thank also the President of the European Commission, of the Council, who were also with us. I would like to just remind everyone that the security guarantees have been finalized and were finalized during this summit and have political backing. They are fully compatible with all NATO planning practices and the Eastern flank protection. They are not taking away from those efforts. And this was made very clear and understood by all members. So in the coming days, we will just need to finalize the final stages of our work, and they will see us putting increased pressure on Russia so that Russia will finally come to the negotiations, able to negotiate peace. President Volodymyr, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Manuel. Dear friends, distinguished Mr. President, all present here. First of all, I would like to thank you for the organization of such a high level of this meeting. I am thankful for yesterday's meeting, also for the meeting of our teams regarding the support of Ukraine, our steps in the future, security guarantees, protection of air, our sea, etc. So we have agreed about many things. Thank you very much for this organization. Thank you for this attention. This is a real special time for us. Today we had a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, the entire free Europe, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. I would like to really thank you because it is the biggest meeting that we have had such we start working in this coalition. Thank you. Also, I would like to join the words of Manuel, and I would like to thank all leaders who were today with us in Paris. Ursula von der Leyen, President of European Commission, the Prime Minister of Poland, Dick, the Prime Minister of Netherlands, Barak, Prime Minister of Netherlands, and also the special representative of President Trump, Mr. Witkoff, was here. A lot of representatives were online, so we are thankful to each of you for your support and readiness. And this is the most important thing, readiness to support us. We talk about the concrete things. We have talked with President Trump. We have talked in Copenhagen in the format of Northern country support. That's also important. So the key topic is very important. It's this only thing, how to finalize this war and end it as soon as possible and guarantee security for Ukraine. Practically all our meetings have two elements. Our security right now, it's support for defense, support of diplomacy, and also long-term guarantees. So how should it work? The key elements, first of all, everyone agrees that it's important for Ukraine to have a peace because it's a peace for the entire Europe. So we have to be strong and stable. We need to support all initiative. We cannot see and hear any offer for peace from Putin. Also, it's very important, this meeting in China, because Putin is going to really use it as a permission to continue his war. Also, Putin tries to show that, he doesn't care about the pressure on him. But we think the situation is completely different. The pressure on Putin works. The situation for Russian economy, it's quite complicated, and everyone who is dealing with Russia also has to understand that. We are going to talk about the tariffs, special tariffs, and the trade, which could help for us. Secondly, the coalition works very actively. The politicians, trade representatives, our teams work actively, and we have done this for a long time. So all understand what could be the basis for this security guarantees. So we do have the frameworks already. So we understand this is not situation for the future, but for now as well, because the strong Ukrainian army, it's the guarantor of security and peace. So it's important to support our army. We mean weapons, training, manufacturing of weapons. All this has to be provided, and it has to be in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years during the wartime, and also to guarantee the security during the peacetime. We do have some plans regarding concrete steps. We know what countries are going to participate in different components of security, who can support us on land, who on air, who on the sea, who doesn't have their own forces, but they can aid financially. Also, we have some concrete steps regarding the manufacturing. We understand there are European manufacturing lines. That's not enough, but we understand that all this is needed, and we need to know how better can we work. Also, we do have manufacturing opportunities in Ukraine right now that are not used because we do not have enough finances. And it is very serious because almost 60% of the arms that we use in Ukraine has been manufactured in Ukraine. Ukraine has really a success in this, and we can also help each and every European countries how to be successful in manufacturing of different arms. It is important for our defense industry. It creates also the safe places for work for people, and also we can be leaders. Europe has to be leaders, and we do that because we building a new security guarantees for Ukraine. We also know the investments can be provided by each country. And Manuel said 26 countries agreed to give security guarantees for Ukraine. And Ukraine, it's important for a long time. This is a first important, serious, concrete result. So I congratulate all of us, and you personally, Manuel, and the entire coalition of the willing. The third, it's important that the United States is with us. We work in a different formats. We can buy American weapons, and those they can also participate in long-term security guarantees. We talked today with the President Trump. Thank you for the support, and it's important to be prepared for peace. We talked about different options. First of all, pressure, economical pressure, because Putin will be forced for peace. We need to take away from the Russian machinery of war means to produce weapons. Also, we have talked about the protection of the Ukrainian sky. It's important for our Ukrainian people. They should not be afraid of Russian drones. Russian drones should not take lives of Ukrainian people. It is possible. We really hope that this program will work. We hope for future contracts. Thank you, Manuel. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you.
We have some time for a few questions.
Intermarathon Єдині новини, Ukraine. The question is for two of the presidents, what kind of format of security guarantees has Europe chosen? What document will be providing this? Is it going to be signed by each of the countries? Has it to be ratified by the parliament? So it would be a legal document, a reversible document. It could work for the years ahead. And also I would like to clarify regarding the support by European partners right now when Putin strengthened and attacks Ukraine much more. Right now, Ukraine is preparing for winter, and we understand that he can use this factor as well. Do you have some new decisions? Can we hope on assistance in this issue as well? Thank you. Thank you for your question. 35 countries participate, and this is the broadest participation of countries. 26 countries support the security guarantees for Ukraine in different kind of formats. The structure of the security guarantees, we won't talk about it today, but the new important elements are important. That's a strong Ukrainian army, manufacturing in Ukraine, and also defense manufacturing in Europe. That's very important to strengthen Ukrainian army. And also, we were talked about different programs to buy different kind of air defense weapon, ballistic missiles, air defense missiles from the United States of America. This is important to strengthen our army. I did not repeat many things because President Macron talked about that. We will not demilitarize the Ukrainian army and will not be less of military. And then talking about real protection from the partner, there are a lot about the infrastructure, about presence. We talked about the presence. I am not ready to say about the quantity, but frankly speaking, we understand how many agreed about that. And the presence will be different because it will be everywhere, and the sea, sky, air, and on the land. We also would like to talk about backstop of America. We count on the United States. We are very happy that America supports us and is a part of security guarantees for Ukraine. But in what kind of format, in details, I am not ready to talk about it right now, but about main elements, we already have an agreement. It's very important. Many things becoming clearer. That's the way it is. You know, support, not only moral support, but also real support. Our military personnel, our population in Ukraine, we will have the real security guarantees. About the political element, we also talk about it, because besides the military assistance and this format, we have also political. At the end of my speech, I said that we have one format. We discussed about it in details with Manuel yesterday. It was the first time we talked about it. We talked about it with our partners that morning, and then also shared this information with Trump. And if we receive the positive signal from President Trump, because we depend a lot in the air defense from them. So if we receive a positive signal from the Americans, we will be ready to share the information with you.
Thank you very much for your question. You're right in saying that there has been a ramp-up in Russian attacks, and that this is why we need to accelerate support for Ukrainian resistance. This is something which we spoke about at length yesterday as part of our bilateral conversations: training, military support, funding with our key partners, all those people who are helping with the Ukrainian war effort. Just quickly to speak about the ramp-up in production of drones. These past few years, there has been a huge change, and that is Ukraine's ability to produce these drones. So we are also sharing a lot of our production capacity. We spoke about this with the President. Roughly 60-70% of all weapons currently used are made in Ukraine, again, with cooperation and assistance coming from allies. This is quite remarkable, and it's something that we want to ramp up. So that's in part answer to your question. As for the formal nature of the security guarantees, remember where we are starting from. In 2024, in February, in this very room, we wrapped up a summit which spoke about strategic ambiguity. Two of us said that one day we will be ready to put troops on the ground. That was Lithuania and France. Two countries. And it was received quite negatively. Currently, as the President just said, there are 20 countries who have confirmed that they are willing to put soldiers on the ground, to provide air support over Ukraine, to provide navy support as well, to ensure reassurance. This is a considerable step forward, which we have seen crystallized over the past few months. So in the coming weeks, we will have a more formal, I mean, it already is a formal, but a formal representation of the security guarantees. 26 countries, or 35 countries of the Coalition of the Willing will ensure security guarantees. 26 of them have made very clear outlines of what they will provide. So the document we have is one for military planning, where the 26 heads of the armed forces and state and government have confirmed what they are ready to do. The other countries will provide additional assistance, so we're going to finalize that work. We're going to work with the United States to try and determine exactly what they will provide to monitor the ceasefire between now and the final security and safety agreement. But now we need to prepare a long-term peace agreement with a multilateral or maybe a series of bilateral agreements for additional support. As I said a few months ago, we already entered into a number of bilateral agreements that went hand in hand with the NATO summit. The power of what we are doing today is that we're going further. We're providing military planning with clear outlined agreements for what everyone is going to provide as part of the reassurance force. So we have operational commitments in place. Now we're going to focus on the legal and diplomatic and political way forward. Mathieu Desmoulins from TF1. Mr. President, You just outlined the broad strokes of what the Navy, Air Force, and Army will provide. Do you already have a number in mind of how many French men and women, how many soldiers will be provided? We also heard other countries, partners, making respective statements, talking about the American safety net. But from what we hear, not a lot has happened since the 18th of July, so what is President Trump going to provide? You just spoke with him a few minutes ago. And a question for President Zelensky. We have moved beyond the date of the 1st of September. Do you feel that a meeting between you and President Putin is possible, and if so, when? Thank you very much. Allow me just to start out by saying that the United States were very clear. When we spoke back in Washington as well, they were very clear, as they said again just a few moments ago, and it is one of the reasons why they wish to be part of this entire process, is that they are willing to be part of the security guarantees. There is no doubt on that. It has been said publicly by President Trump. It was reiterated once again by the Secretaries of State and Defense in our various ad hoc meetings. So now what we need to do is plan that assistance with the United States, within the framework which I just outlined. Another thing I could just say to answer your question is that, well, I'm not going to give you the details here today, because we don't want to leave ourselves too exposed or give away too much information. In fact, we didn't even share it amongst ourselves openly. We have it in front of our eyes, but the heads of the armed forces know what they are working with, because we are talking about the line of defense for Ukraine and for ourselves. So we're not going to outline exactly what we're going to do with Russia listening. Just as Putin would not give away information about where his troops are. So our heads of armed forces have their contact information, and they know how they can plan together. We have robust measures in place to be fully effective when they are deployed. And this applies to all 26 states who are going to actively take a part in that effort.
Thank you for your question. First of all, I would like to finish answer my first question. You have talked about the parliaments. Yes, all partners understand we do not want to repeat the Budapest Memorandum. We do not accept that. The same way goes about the Minsk agreement. So we would like to have the guarantees, security guarantees. That's why it has to be ratified by the parliament of the countries. About the meeting, yes, this meeting is necessary. It's not a wish. It's a necessity. We support it in any format possible, trilateral, bilateral, but in my opinion, Russia does everything to postpone it. American partners told us that Putin invited me to Moscow. You know what I think? When you don't want to have a meeting, so what do you have to do? You have to invite me to Moscow. That's why I think that Russia started to talk about meeting. That's not a bad thing. But right now, we do not see any wish on their part to stop this war, to finish this war. And the meeting, in my opinion, we are adult leaders. And on that meeting, we have to receive certain results. And the wish is to end this war.
Bonjour. Я озвучу Lydia Taran, Ukrinform.
Lydia Taran, Ukrinform. The first question is to President Zelensky. And partially you have answered this already, but still I would like to clarify. During this long-lasting, as we journalists understand, meeting with Trump, did he mention about some new deadlines for Putin? Or you have talked already about the meeting tete-a-tete, him and you, and the Americans did talk about it? Or there were some other ways of these meetings? And also you have talked about the political format of security that we are going to get. Are we talking here about EU membership or something else? Thank you for your question. First of all, among the security guarantees that we see, the membership in the European Union, it's a must for us. That's economic guarantees of security, economic, political, geopolitical. That's why in our approach to the security guarantee, this is a very important point that we have as a separate point. Talking about our long meeting, we had a very long meeting. Many leaders were present during this conversation. You understand there are a lot of ideas, a lot of work has been done, a lot wanted to be told. So all leaders wanted to talk, and each of leaders had some proposals. Of course, tariff sanctions and the format of the meeting with Putin. And it was important when America is going to agree to something, if Putin will continue postponing this meeting. So the vice president of the America was there, Mr. Vance, and on this side we had Steve Witkoff, the special representative of President Trump.
I have a question about the ceasefire and the peace agreement. Apparently, you said that Europeans are willing to be part of the security guarantees once a ceasefire is in place. But yesterday you said that they will only come into effect once the peace agreement is in place. Could you please clarify what the ceasefire will be? Is it an integral part of the peace agreement, or is it separate? Thank you for the question, so I can clarify this point. We have always said that for a ceasefire to lead to peace, we need robust security guarantees. Over the past few months, we have seen all sorts of things. A proposal from the ceasefire from Zelensky and Trump, which was refused by Putin, saying, I don't want a ceasefire, I want a peace agreement. In truth, no matter whether it's a peace agreement, armistice, or ceasefire, the day this conflict comes to an end, the security guarantees will be rolled out. That is what we have promised. Mr. President, a question for BFM TV. Just a question about the 26 countries. Could you please say whether that includes Germany, Italy, Poland, who were quite reticent about the idea of sending out troops? And a question about sanctions. You spoke about coordinated sanctions with the United States in the coming weeks. What sort of sanctions are the United States talking about? What did Donald Trump ask of you during the call? Did he mention Russian oil? And what are European leaders going to do to put economic pressure on China? Because China is financing Russia's war efforts. Could you please just clarify what your stance is on that? And I have another question. Given political instability in France, what is the message that you would like to give, also given the complex international political climate that you are dealing with as well? Because in the coming days, we have the vote in Parliament for François Bayrou. First, the three countries that you mentioned are part of the 26 who have said that they will be there to either resupply the Ukrainian army, to provide navy, air or land support. They said that they will provide a contribution, each in their own way. Some will put soldiers on the ground, others, being members of NATO, will provide access through the bases. Now, I won't specify exactly who has said what, but they are leading contributors to the overall effort, and they have been key drivers in our discussions. To answer your question about sanctions, President Trump and the American administration, as they have been since the very beginning of this conflict, have made certain choices. There are two EU member states who have continued to buy Russian oil, and those countries said that they are quite close to the American administration. And therefore, they are best placed to find ways of stopping that. We have also looked at primary and secondary types of sanctions. So primary sanctions on the Russian economy and secondary sanctions on those countries supporting the Russian economy. As part of that discussion, China was mentioned. But ultimately, each country has to decide what they are going to do, because each country is sovereign of their own policy. You are right in mentioning that the international climate and what is happening in Ukraine and the Near East is a climate in which a loss is expected of France. And as we see the global reshuffle, we understand that Europe and Europe's position is quite an interesting one. So we want to be ambitious while remaining quite responsible and stable in everything that we do, and that all of our political parties need to broach all of these topics with the general context in mind.
Talking about the countries that you have mentioned, Germany, Italy, Poland, of course, these countries are the guarantors of security for Ukraine, and I support here Manuel. Right now, we cannot dwell on the details, but each of these countries is ready to give us guarantees. But again, I would like to stress that we do have understanding already. Regarding what we were talking about, yes, President Trump, the USA talked about it. And again, I agree with Manuel completely about this. The President Trump is not happy that Europe buys Russian oil. Among others, there are two countries, and we know this is Slovakia and Hungary. But I would like to say, when Russia attacked our energy system, and as a response, we attacked their energy system, they make a lot of money on it and spend this money later on weapons against us. So these two countries complain to the President Trump that Ukraine is such and such because they cut their opportunities to become certain amount of oil for them from Russia. So these are sanctions, but I am happy that today the United States of America completely openly talk about this. They mention these countries and they say that this country help Russian war machine, and we all have to stop that.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your questions, and thank you, President Zelensky, for your time.